The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out. The geeks come out at night.
Hello and welcome to Keep Crawlin with Mike and Brendan. I am Michael Curtis.
I am Brendan LaSalle.
And once again, we are rocking to you from our 1970s basement to entertain and educate you during this coronavirus shutdown. So thank you all for joining us again for our second episode. Welcome back if you were here for the first. And if you were not here for the first, I expect a note from your parents before the end of this episode. So what's going on, Brendan? How you doing, man?
I am doing great. Happy to be here. Went out in the world for a few hours today, and boy, it's scary out there, turns out. So happy to be home, back in my swank 70s style basement, ready to send the gaming hits out all over to Mrs. and Mr. America and all the ships at sea.
Like Apocalypse Now, never leave the basement. That's the one the one lesson we've learned from all this.
Yep.
Why would you leave this grandeur that we are in here?
It's so swank.
Cool. I'm glad you made it out safely and you've returned home, and we are ready to talk to our guests. Well, not our guests, our viewers.
Our viewers. How's everything been going with you today, Mike? Everything good?
For me, it was a nice, quiet Memorial Day weekend. So now I'm just kind of playing around with some new tools. I got an Airbrush just before this whole thing started. I figured I would learn how to use that, but I had to get a face mask for it first because there's all particulate matter and everything, and it's a little difficult to get a face mask this time of year. So. I finally got the one I wanted. It delivered, and I've just been playing around with that. So by the time this is all over, I will have a whole new skill set that I did not have going into it. It's on more than just learning how to Twitch, and Twitch I've always known how to do, but how to Twitch and broadcast on the OBS and talk to all these good people about gaming and stuff. So
fantastic.
All right. Well, I suppose that we've got about an hour. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk to you and talk to one another.
Yes.
We should get rolling. We should jump right in. People who saw us last week know that we introduced a new segment. Well, a new segment. This whole thing is new. So
everything.
We did in a segment we were calling Percent in Lair, but we decided that we're going to we're going to rename it based on the feedback that we've gotten from you fine folks. So we are now going to call this Treasure Type U, and that's Y-O-U, Treasure Type U.
Because it's all about you.
We want you to send us your cool stuff. Well, not your cool stuff per se. You can show us, you can send us your cool stuff because, we got to stock this basement somehow. But we want to see the gaming stuff that means a lot to you. We want to see, your pictures of your favorite games. We want to see your cool gaming room. Your favorite gaming buddies. Just give you a chance to show off and strut your stuff. So I think we got a couple submissions over the last 7 days, and we're going to be delving into the mailbag.
Oh yeah,
we have a mailbag now. 7 days in, we have a mailbag. We're already behind.
Yeah, and I want to point out that we got this wonderful video submission from Kojo, and getting an email from Kojo in regards to the show made me feel like we had arrived. Like, oh my God, Kojo watched, and he saw this, and he sent us something. It was amazing. But then I couldn't figure out how to make the video work on Zoom/OBS/Twitch. So we're going to show that one in a future episode.
We have top men working on it.
Top men.
A couple top women too. This is not the 1930s again. So we're going to talk about Treasure Type U. Do we have any sort of elaborate intro for that there, Brendan?
It's we have the intro that I was able to do for him. So I've got a theme song for Treasure Type U. All right, you ready for this?
Okay.
Treasure Type U. Treasure Type U. Here we go. Are you ready for our first item? After my dulcet tones. Okay, our first item is showing now. So this was sent to us by Mr. Tim White, and we're very grateful for his amazing submission. So Tim sent us a great email. Tim actually sent us a couple of items, but we're going to focus on this one for right now, and I'm going to read a little bit of his email. Tim says, behold, the Star Frontiers adaptation of the 2010 film. I was absolutely obsessed with 2010 for years after it came out, and it remains the only media property I've ever cosplayed. Tim, cosplay pictures or it didn't happen. I want to see them. Tim also goes on to say, I did get to run this a couple of times using the Star Frontier rules and was amazing how differently the story came from the film and each other. It taught me a lot about player agency in games. So I'm going to show, I got an interior shot too. Get ready. Here's an interior shot. Wow, how handsome. He says, playing Star Crawls the last few cons online totally brought back memories of those Star Frontier days. I feel that. He says, note the dot matrix printed cataloging label on the inside. I had created a whole database to track my game collection. Impressive. So that is of course, amazing. And we are super grateful for Tim sharing that with us. Tim, thank you so much. That was super cool. And, what can I say other than Star Frontiers?
Right. When you sent me the email with this, you were like, I had no idea that there was a 2010 adaptation for Star Frontier. Mm-hmm. I knew about it vaguely because I think I remember seeing it online. But as I was telling Brendan, there's a slight possibility that I do remember seeing it on the shelf in like 1984 when I was at like Great Escape Hobbies or whatever at the Sunbed Mall here in wonderful Long Island, New York, and scoffing at it even then. But I have to say I've never actually read it, so I don't know. Obviously, we have at least one fan of it.
Yeah.
I certainly played enough Star Frontiers back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Love Star Frontiers. Yeah. I got to admit, I did see it one time at a hobby shop, and I got scared, and I threw a thigh bone at it. And that was the only thing I could think to do. You know what I mean? I just thought, what is it? And then I just, at that point, I just, no, that's not what happened. I had never seen it before Tim sent us that very groovy picture with the interiors over there. And I was so excited about Star Frontiers when it came out, and it was not the first game I ever introduced to my crew, but I was like, hey guys, I got a new game. I taught myself how to run it. We made up characters, and we ran some adventures. It didn't. I don't know. I don't think it was as well supported as I would have liked. I would have liked to have seen a lot more things about space and stars, what the journey was like. I wound up making up a couple of adventures and then sort of letting life fallow. But still dearly love the system. I think some of the coolest alien races ever devised for a role-playing game. Some true originals there. I mean, everyone loves the Dracolytes. Come on. One-celled organism guy that can stretch up and make things and loves puns.
Well, I had a buddy of mine in high school, my buddy Ed Stricker. He had a Dracolyte character, and I remember it only because of its name. The name of the character was Blob Dylan.
Nice. There you go.
Did you play any Traveler, or was Star Frontiers your first, hard? Well, not really. Well, hard sci-fi is not like space opera.
Yeah. No, I had played Traveler. Traveler was actually one of the first games I learned after Dungeons and Dragons. I had a very dear friend of mine who got his parents unfortunately got caught up in the satanic panic of the time, and he was banned from playing Dungeons and Dragons, but as a compensation prize, his parents picked him up the Traveler role-playing game. So we had a lot of fun making up characters and flying around in our scout couriers with that. Unfortunately, my buddy John this is my friend who did it, was just not the best dungeon master, and it didn't stick with our group. But I certainly I love the system, and I went back and I've actually picked up versions of it since then. And now I kind of collect old Traveler stuff. So, how about yourself?
You know what? I kind of missed Traveler when it came out. I don't know if it just wasn't supported at my local hobby store, or it might have been the fact that the original Traveler kind of lacked in what we call commercial art design. If you go to the store and there's the classic black box Traveler with like the just a Traveler in the red font and everything.
Yeah.
And then you have something like like Star Frontiers next to it, which has like the Elmore painting with the Traveler sites and everything on it. It's like,
come on.
If it's 1984, which one are you going to go for?
Right.
I think I just went to, this box is much bigger and has art on it. This must be the superior, superior adventure, superior game system. I've played Traveler once or twice since then. I still don't have as deep of a connection to it to be able to kind of say like it's my go-to game or it's something I want to play more of. But hey, I won't say no to it if the opportunity comes along.
Agreed.
I understand the space combat system in Traveler can be a little dicey.
Yeah, I see what you did there, Mike. I see what you did there. No, yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, we wound up sort of doing our 13-year-old kind of adapted version of it, sort of fast forwarded over the parts that we had a hard time with, and there was I remember at one point we decided to simulate some vehicle combat with it and combine it with our old Car Wars game. And we sat down to do that and spent a long time making up space buggies, but then never actually rolled with them. We just, sat around and crunched the numbers and bought lasers and put lasers on cars that absolutely should not have had lasers,
I don't think there's any car which should absolutely not have lasers on it.
I know, right?
Well, I grew up driving on the Long Island Expressway and then going out to California and driving on the 405. So I think, there's just lasers should just come with certain vehicles, depending on what state you live in. So.
I don't know. I feel like, I hear a lot of push for flying cars, and people are like, oh man, this is it. We're going to have flying cars by 2030. Because that's what we need, are these idiots out there with one more dimension to screw up in, right? I just don't. That's the last thing any of us need is flying cars. Come on now.
Right.
Jetpacks. So that was. Thank you very much for sharing the 2010, the Star Frontiers Adventure adaptation. I do know that there's also a 2001 adaptation of it. So if you're really hardcore, you can play the entire Arthur C. Clarke, adventure path. Your character's only 9 years older by the time 2010 comes up. Just briefly, though, you're also a baby. That happens just for a second, but it's a key moment in the game. So their special old man eating at the table rules are incredible. I mean, until you've experienced the majesty. So
I think we're gonna run a 2001 LARP at Gen Con 2021. Just you and I, and we're just gonna play the old men part.
Hell yeah.
Doug Kahn will be going on, and just be you and I in bathrobes eating like custard or something.
I'll bring my thigh bone because I still have it.
So we have one of our viewers here. Also, he says that they do have the 2001 adaptation, but have never run it. So I think that there's something we need to do here.
Hey, DCC days.
It's Tim White.
Oh, it's Tim White. Hey, thanks for tuning in, Tim. What's up, man?
Yeah. No, thank you very much for sharing your personal treasure type view with us, Tim.
I love that. I think that's I love this segment. I love getting this to learn about all of these cool things that I had never seen before. So please, by all means, if you're watching and you've got some of your old gaming artifacts, hard to find, rare items, wowzers like this, please go ahead and send me a picture. That'll be Brendan at goodman-games.com. I want to see it. And sorry, I got a whole bunch last time and I didn't respond to them all. Some of them I just filed and I haven't responded. So I owe you an email. I owe a lot of people an email. You think you're special? I owe you emails.
And Tim, if you come to Gen Con 2021, you are going to run the 2001 LARP for Brendan and I. So
It's going to be great. I got my bathrobe all picked out, so just, get ready for that action.
The graying of the hobby. That's it.
I know, right? We will. All of us shall one day LARP 2010. All of us, So, well, that was fantastic, and I hope the graphics. And it looks like the graphics actually worked. Oh, how's it? So, I'll tell you what, we're getting into this pretty good. I think is it time to move on to the meat of our adventure tonight, sir?
meat of our adventure, our main topic, which we were going to talk about. And I don't think it's it's a perfect time for us to talk about this too,
Yes.
especially with everything that's going on and conventions coming up and everything. So tonight, Brendan and I would like to talk about gaming for strangers, and sometimes actually gaming with strangers.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brendan, I think we might have covered this in the first show, but in a normal year, how many conventions do you attend?
In a normal year, I attend between 15 and 18 conventions.
Isn't that crazy, people?
Yeah, it is. It's crazy now. Like, I'm watching them go by on the calendar as I'm not going to these things. And I gotta say, every one of them that I'm missing really breaks my heart a little bit. I miss so many of the people people and places that I visit, people I game with. There are some folks that I have these like weird gaming groups that like I play with them every year. Sometimes once, sometimes twice, and yeah, I miss it terrible. But I have done a lot of gaming with strangers, and you are no stranger to gaming, to con games, pickups, things as well.
I am not. I do maybe a third of what you do every year, but still, that's enough time to you running at least 4 or 5 games each convention for anywhere from 6 to 8 people, and the numbers begin to add up after a while. And now that we're all gaming online, I've been doing stuff through the Dungeon Crawl Classics Facebook page. So I was just saying, hey, you guys want to play? So I played with groups that I have never actually met in the flesh, who only know me by reputation. So even online, I'm meeting new people and playing with them. So it's I think it's a topic that not everybody is comfortable with, or some people could use some advice on how to deal with it. So that's why I would figure it would be a good topic for you and I to discuss this evening. So
And it is a good one. And like I said, we've got some experience with it. So I would say that there's I think that. It's kind of like, your first convention game as a player and your first convention game as a GM. Both of them are kind of like your first day at school, and you're apprehensive and you're not sure how it's going to go. But then you go, and nobody stabs you. You realize, hey, these are all folks that have come, like myself, to have a good time. And they want to play a game, they want to enjoy a game. Once you realize that you're not sitting down with a bunch of Draculites, and that they're just mortal men and women just like yourself who are there to have a good time, then you can sit and kind of relax and do it. Do you remember your first convention game?
The first one I ran or the first one I played?
Let's go with both. What's the first one you recall running?
The first one, oh gosh, the first one I remember running would have to be, I think that when I got back into the hobby, I think the first convention I kind of went. That's a difficult one to say. Okay. I think I might have done. There was a small con here in New York called Anonacon, and I think that might have been the first place I actually ran a convention game. But I'm not 100% sure. It might just be I was terrified and I blocked it out. So that's it. I think that was the same year I went to GaryCon, but I think I just played stuff at GaryCon. I didn't run anything at the first GaryCon, GaryCon 4, which I attended. So that was. I mean, it's so long ago and buried underneath like such a strata of other games that I've run since then. I can't really remember. Do you remember the first game that you ran?
Yeah, I do because I was way late. For me, it was actually when we had it was before we actually put out X Crawl. We were kind of doing Panda Head Publishing and myself. We were doing a kind of a blitzkrieg on all of these conventions and trade shows in order to sort of like get the word out about X Crawl, months before the actual book was in stores and came out. So I remember the first one I went to. I want to say it was maybe St. Louis. Maybe we were at it was one of the trade shows, and I can't remember exactly which trade show it was. But I do remember setting up to run a demo, and there being like way too many people there, and me telling one of the Panda Head folks, "There's too many folks here. We're gonna have to." He goes, "You run a game for whoever shows up." I was like, "Okay." So my first convention game, I think I had 11 players playing X
Wow.
Crawl who were all doubled up. Like I didn't have that many character classes, so like there was like 2 of the same wizard, 2 of the exact warrior, 2 of the on down the line. And I ran X Crawl and I was terrified. And I do remember there was I remember there was an open bar and someone just kept putting a cup of wine in front of me. And like by the end of the game, I had too much wine. But apparently the game went well, and that was fun. My first one as a player, though, was also Long Island. My first convention as a player when I was a kid. I'm talking about like somewhere in the neighborhood of 1983. My parents brought me and some of my friends and dropped us off at the LI Relaxicon, which I think is many, many moons gone now. I think that one didn't make the cut. But one of my buddies went. They had an open gaming area, and a friend of mine ran the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun, and I was a player in that. And what I had a couple of neat, like, I remember being really entranced. There was one guy who played there whose name was Wookie. That was the only name he would go by. Big, hairy guy, T-shirt said "Let the Wookie win." And there were reporters there, and they did they did a little article about that. They featured him in the article, and it was very cool. Like my first, I had a little brush with greatness the first time I was there, so. It was neat. I was a kid. I was awed that we had reporters there, that they actually, followed this one fellow. It was neat. It was a good time.
Yeah. Strangely enough, I think the first convention I played at was Icon, which was also out here on Long Island, out in Stony Brook, and sometime in the '80s. I remember I got involved somehow in a tournament. I didn't quite know what the hell was going on, but I do have a very clear memory of playing that for the very first time. I know we did not do well in the tournament, so maybe that's why I'm not involved in tournaments to this day. I don't know. But Tony, one of our viewers, also has commented that he's running the same thing where he's running games at Gen Con, and he's got players that have become kind of regulars now too. So
isn't that cool?
So the old adage is that strangers are just friends you haven't met yet.
Exactly. So this is the way. Here's what I recommend: if you're showing up there, realize that whoever shows up at the table, whether they look like you or not, whether they seem like you or not, they're all people out there who are interested in having a good time playing a game. And that's what to focus on, that everyone's there to enjoy themselves, everyone's there to have fun. Obviously, you are going to sometimes run into a clash of play styles and a clash of expectations about what a role-playing game should be. Hopefully we've come a long way enough where, you be easy with your fellow players, I would say. Try to work with them. If they're not, like I said, you're going to sit down and you're going to encounter the odd people who don't play the way that you do. They're going to have people who are used to steady house rules and think that's the way it just plays. People who are, power gamers and such, it takes some working with, but really the key to all of that is communication. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I see what you're doing here, but we do it differently at my table, or we do it differently at my home campaign. How do you want to handle it for today? Always look at it as a challenge and a thing to sort of like, change and adapt to going forward. I recommend very much. Try to find that common ground. See what anybody that shows up at a convention, you've got a lot more in common with them than you're going to have different with them if they're not a man from Mars.
Right.
Communicate. Be gentle with folks and such. And I think. Go in with the expectation that you're going to have to adapt a little bit and try to make it easy for other people to adapt to your play style as well.
Right, and that really goes for both sides of the screen. Whether because if whether you're attending a game or whether you're running a game, you're not doing it for the group that you're comfortable with. You don't know everybody's idiosyncrasies. We don't know everybody's sense of humor. We don't know you don't know everybody's past. So it's it's always best to kind of take a kind of an even kind of straight tack right down the center, and unless you're setting yourself up from the very beginning, I'm like this, in the catalog, like I am running the the temple of the skinless skeletons that are bloody and they are filled with spiders and snakes. Obviously at that point, if anybody has a thing about skinless skeletons with filled with spiders and snakes, they know not to attend. But for the most part, I guess from a judge's point of view, it's like I always make sure I try to keep things like PG, You know, I mean, just, you know, and then I can adjust that too, depending on who's at the table. You know, I mean, obviously you get, you know, my gamers tend to skew at least teens, but every now and then we'll get, you know, like an 8-year-old kid wants to play. I'm like, sure, come on, let's play. And as long as, you know, Dave Beatty's not there and make them cry, you know, everything should be all right. So.
Hi, Dave. No, I agree. I think that, you know, really, if you think about it, the table experience begins when you enter your events. Talking about strictly from the GM side here, okay? You know, I think, you know, you had a great point there. You know, be really clear about what you're going to do. Most of the stuff I run is, very much PG. I mean, it's a fantasy game. There are certainly fantasy violence elements. There are monsters. You will be fighting monsters. They will be trying to whack you and such. But like the one horror game that I run, I've tried to be really expressly, you know, in the catalog. I'm actually going to run my DCC horror game I just put my DCC Day games in today. Hooray, Brendan! I did it. It took me a minute, but they're in. And I'm going to run my horror game there. And I said, you know, this is a horror game, you know, hopefully, if people have a question about what I said this is going to have strong elements of fantasy horror and some graphic body horror. And you know, if people need specifics, I hope that they'll write to me and say, "Hey, what do we, what do we think of and such?" But I think the set up expectations with your game entries, and when you're looking for game entries, you know, if you have a question, if there's going to be something in there that's going to be disturbing to you, reach out to that DM beforehand if you can, and try to see, you know, maybe is this something I can work with, or is this the kind of game that maybe is not for me and I should walk away from, you know.
We have a question from the viewers for you, Brendan. You have to excuse us, those of you playing along at home. Is that I am the only one currently who can see any chat going on. Brendan is still kind of behind, and I'm looking at it on my cell phone, and it's really, really tiny font. So if you ever see me do like this, I'm trying to read what it is. So if I misread anything or I miss your name or anything, remember this is episode 2, so we're still trying to get things going. But Tim want to know, Brendan, how much playing have you done at cons? How much playing, not how much game, like how much convention running?
I mean, from a percentage-wise, I certainly play a lot less than I run at conventions. You know, I go to a convention. You know, but there's a couple reasons for that. But one of them is that I am one of nature's GMs. You know, like I live to run games. I love it. I will sit in and play when I can, but usually if I show up at a gaming table, either it's Sunday morning at GaryCon, which I give myself, or something has fallen through. I've had a game where I've had a bunch of no-shows and I have showed up to play, or it's an after-hours thing. I would say my ratios of convention games played, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but my ratio of convention games run to convention games played is probably something like 45 to 1, which, you know, I mean, I think I played like 3 or 4 games last year on the circuit, and they were all, you know, like I said, other than a couple of exceptions, they were after-hour games. You know, and a lot of times with after-hour games, I just sit and play for a little while. You know, I try to leave myself at any given convention, like sort of like Saturday night for socializing, and like last year at Origins, I went and hung out with some friends, and they wanted to go and play the Kobold Ate My Baby, whatever. Speaking of games that could use a warning in front of them, and it was really, really fun. So I played that, but very, very few. I've played many, many fewer games than I have run over the years.
Right. That's actually is a kind of serves as a nice segue, because what you're saying is that, you know, when you're at a convention, and like when I'm at a convention, it's a little different than when somebody is just like, oh, I want to run a game at my local convention. It's like Brendan and I, when we're at a convention, it's literally we're working. You know, It is a job. Like we are there to, you know, to fly the Goodman Game flag, to you know, to show off Dungeon Crawl Classics, to show off X Crawl, to show off, you know, whatever. But you know, we're there. You know, the boss is paying for us to go do this. So, so we have to be very kind of aware of, you know, not only how we're running, like how we're running games, because we're actually the public face of the company at that point. And we're the public face of the game. But not everybody, you know, not everybody's in the same boat. But to some extent, is that, you know, no matter what game that you're playing, or you're running everything, you, in a sense, you are an ambassador of not only that game, but also, role playing as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not mean much, but, I mean, do you ever know like a game master who is not, has at least one eye out for like new players? Because, I mean, you're always kind of looking, you always want to meet other gamers in your local area. So like when you're running at a local con, that's a perfect opportunity to meet other, cool people.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be, you want to have your best foot forward. You want to be personable, and you want to, at least make it look like, hopefully you didn't sleep in your clothes on the, on the way to the con. So I mean that doesn't really have much to say about like how gameplay it is, but I think you're your own ad, you're your own PR.
Yeah.
So being aware of and although I don't remember if somebody who is sitting down at your table, that may be their first role playing experience.
Yeah.
So do we want to continue to grow the hobby? Yeah. So you want to make sure that they're having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the hobby, and I feel like I'm even if I wasn't in the industry, I would still try to be an ambassador for the hobby, because I believe in the power of RPGs. I believe in the power of tabletop. I think it can do wonders. I'm very interested in gaming as therapy for people. That's like I really want to become more involved in that aspect of it. So go and put your best foot forward, and I think that one of the key things is to make it really easy on new players. I've played with a lot of new folks, both new to Dungeon Crawl Classics and new to role-playing games, and I still do. Every year I get a couple, and I take that very seriously. I take that, I really want to, my law is fun at the table for all. That is what I really care about, So, try to, as a GM, that means I try to make sure I involve all my players. I try to make sure that I meet their expectations. I try, again, with the 8-year-old, I try not to, if I've got, I try not to disrupt these things and such. I'll tell you what, my big downfall is language. I very often, usually before a game, I'll say, okay, anyone have a problem with language here? Anyone, if I use the odd curse word? And, if someone says, yes, I do, or in one memorable case, I'd like to not hear any F-bombs. And I was like, then F-bombs you shall not hear. And I was really careful about it that time. And the twice I messed up, they forgave me. No, I'm kidding. I was very careful. So, but work with your table. Try to, be there for them. And, some people will go into a game like as a GM. And it's easier for me to talk about that side of it. And they just want to really grind. They want to just like get in there and mix it up and really just try to show off. To me, my benchmark for whether or not I've done well isn't if I killed a lot of players or whatever, but it's did everybody have a good time? Did we all enjoy ourselves? If we just sit down and laugh for 4 hours and everyone walks away from the table going, oh my gosh, that was amazing. We got one room done and we laughed our heads off. I feel like I've done my job. Bigger in life,
Yeah, that is so important, and I think a lot of it also comes down to something that this doesn't matter if you're playing with strangers, or it doesn't matter if you're playing with your regular group. And we talked about last time how it's kind of difficult to do it in a virtual, like an online environment, but just that ability to read the table. I think if you want to be a great game master, like that is the skill that you have to develop over anything else. I would say, like you could, your math could be sucky. You could, you have your power levels off. You could write the worst description. I will even allow you to have, like, I've had the monotone game master, where everything is the same description, and that drives me up the wall. But if you can read the room, and if you're doing monotone voice and you see my eyes glazing over and me looking at the clock and trying to figure out how soon I can get out of there, that's an example of like, okay, now I know that Mike's monotone voice is not working, so maybe I need to insert Daleks. Like if Daleks, then I can justify like monotone voice. Work with me here. And I'm willing to give you a lot. But that's just you have that. Like you can't like. You're not psychic. You can't everybody sits down at the table and you look at everybody and say, all right, I know that kid does not like F-bombs, and I know, that guy's scared of spiders, and I know she's here to just kill people because, she hates her ex-husband and her ex, whatever, it's but you can tell that, especially over the course of 4 hours. You can get an idea of like, okay, all right, this guy's definitely here to he wants to roll initiative every chance he gets, while this person wants to role play, the shopping trip. We have to find that happy medium in between that. You give the person 1 minute to do their little shopping spiel, and then the guy who wants to deal with every problem, by smacking it upside the head with a sword. You give him his sword smacking problems, but then there's a couple of times, okay, well, it's not always about you, so we'll try to move things around.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And as a player, I think it's, if you're on the other side of that, if you see somebody, be a good player too. I mean, try to, as a player, I take some responsibility for the game as well. And if I see somebody is not having a good time or they're whatever, I'll try to help them out. Try to give, either engage with them in character or, ask if they have any questions or whatever. But, try to, on that other side of the equation, try to, make sure everybody's having fun. Yeah, read the table as a player as well. And obviously you're still trying to have fun, still trying to strategize, still trying to figure out the dungeon and do your best. But also, try to, take some responsibility for your group and try to make sure that they're also having fun. You know what I mean? Like, realize this is a group activity, a social activity. Don't be antisocial. Don't go in there and don't take advantage. Don't make it harder for people if you can, When
we were talking before off camera, and you brought up a good point, is that one of the challenges from a player's point of perspective is that you're sitting down with 5 or 7 or 3 other strangers that you have no idea you have no idea what they're like or anything like that. But you guys have to get along for the next 4 hours, at least, and you have to kind of work together. So do you have some good advice of like how to, obviously you don't want to sit down next to the person next to you and decide like, Anton is my greatest buddy. We fought in the Dragon Wars, and we go way back. But do you have a tip for how to kind of establish at least like, maybe even just a repartee, or even maybe the slightest relationship with like the other players around the table, so it gives everybody something to work off of?
I do. I try to, as a player, have at least one bit of business with everybody else on the team. When you're in a group, you're over there, and that might just mean maybe you've got a little bit of you make a little quip to the warrior or whatever, or you tell the wizard you think he does it with mirrors, you know what I mean? But you have some kind of interaction with them that shows that you're not just a chit and a board, but that even if it's just like, hey, great job there defending me from that, or wow, if you ever shoot me with an arrow again by accident when you mean to hit it, or we're going to have a knife fight or whatever. I think a good goal as a player is to have a little bit of business with everybody at the table, have a little something a little interaction between your character and their character, as soon as you can, to kind of establish that rapport there. Just that little bit, making that bridge, reaching out to them, And sometimes, if it's a weird thing, sometimes I'll say quietly to somebody, hey, can we have a little bit of business here? Like, can I have maybe your character, my character, we're both rivals because of this thing or whatever. I've done that plenty of times. Just ask somebody. I don't pass notes, or I try not to pass notes. That makes people feel weird, like between players. But I'll definitely say, hey, what if I'm really mad? Would you, I don't care. I want to have fun. But what if I'm opposed to your character's feelings on whatever it is, I got an example. I got to play in my very good friend Paul Suda ran an amazing game of the Firefly role-playing game at a little private convention I used to go to out in Colorado. I hope to go to again at some point. It was in my top 5 all-time games. And I was the pilot and somebody else was the captain. And at one point I was like, just between, when we had a moment, I'm like, I had a funny idea because they gave me a pre-gen and my character I had a leaky brain pan. I was a little bit off, So I said, hey, can we have a little bit of rapport here? Like, what if, I very often, when we see other ships, I moon them out through the window and you yell at me for it. Would that be okay? Like, that's a weird thing, but they were like, oh yeah, that'd be fine. So like, I had to like bring it up, like, okay, like, oh Captain, like they're like, Luna, don't do it, don't. And I was like, ah, and I wasn't trying to really make them mad. I was just trying to make everybody at the table laugh and have this little funny bit of rapport that my character and their character had. And that, the two times that came up, I broke the table up with it, and it was, she did really yelling at me. She was the straight man, and the straight man makes it work, But that's a pretty extreme example. But having a little something there with every other player at the table, I think it's a good goal, and it's a good way to sort of like, make sure that the table is that everyone is engaged with everybody else, and that's huge.
Right. Yeah, but I think we should follow that up with a disclaimer: is that remember you were mooning them in character in descriptive sense. You weren't dropping trowel. Because that just goes against everything we just spent 15 minutes talking about not to do. So.
No. And that actually is another really good point too. And this is I can't stress this enough. I simulated mooning out the space window. I did not actually show anybody my buttocks. I also don't handle anybody else. As a like don't actually, even if your character and them are having a thing, just you can reach over and pretend you're doing it. You can reach over and do whatever, but don't grab people. Don't actually physically interact with anybody else. Or if you feel like it's important, clear it with them ahead of time. You can do anything if you clear it with them ahead of time. I've seen crazy things happen. You know what I'm saying? And that's completely okay. Okay, I've seen a team actually playing X-Crawl did a little human pyramid out there to demonstrate what their finishing move was. It was hysterical. But they all worked it out beforehand. They weren't just trying to force somebody down there and like climb up on top of them, So, don't physically, don't grab anybody, and don't touch anybody's dice or stuff or books or papers without permission.
Right. Brendan, I think we should take a brief second to acknowledge the fact that we've successfully made it as Twitch stars, because as it was just pointed out, our chat has successfully attracted our first spam bot. So
Do svidaniya, spam botski. Comrades, welcome. Oh boy.
Let's see. So first time game, like newbie judge. No, not newbie judge. Like obviously, like if you've never run a game before and you're running at a convention for the first time, then hats off to you, sir or madam. That's it.
Bold.
But, say you run for your home group for 6 months or 20 years or whatever. You're playing for a convention for the first time. All right. Obviously you have the jitters or anything. What is a way? What are some of the trips that you could do to kind of compensate for that? Like I will say this, it's like make sure that you have your stuff. Make sure you have your stuff going, and make sure you have all your character sheets printed out. I will say this: if you're running a gaming convention, always do pre-gens, okay? Because you're there. I mean, some people really enjoy rolling up characters at the table, but you have 4 hours, and it's really easy to fall down that rabbit hole. Next thing you know, you've got 2 hours and a half, to go through. So always have your pre-gens ready. Also make sure, go through your pre-gens and make sure you have the right pre-gens, because as you were talking about when you said you were running X-Crawl, you had to double up characters and everything. At Total Con, like I think 3 years ago, I was running my Stonehell game. I was just going, okay, everybody just come and play and everything like that. And somehow or another, in the prepping for it, I ended up with like 12 copies of the Cleric. Like that was it. Like somehow or another, I forgot like all the rest of the characters. So I just had a stack of the same Cleric.
I mean, how did you handle it? How'd you do it?
We just I think what we did is like, okay, everybody just pick a class and just swap the numbers around. So it was like we roll. It was just like, like this is gonna become my strength, this is my dexterity or my intelligence, or quick roll hit. I mean, it was Labyrinth Lord, so my Labyrinth Lord gave it home. One of our players, Jack, like if his character died in a fight, like it was his goal to roll up a new character and get back into the game before the fight that killed him ended. So I mean, that was, that's how fast it takes to take a relevant old school D&D character. But
nice.
So it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you're, if God forbid you're running something really complex, and you realize you only have that, you have one Pathfinder Barbarian, and you need, you're going to be a little out of sorts there at the table. So. So yeah, so definitely always make sure you have your character sheets. What else? What advice can we give to the newbie judge rolling
The newbie judge? Yeah, I would say even if you think you know the adventure pretty well, it would behoove you. Like this is okay. So we're talking best possible scenario. Obviously, you can't always do this. I would try to run any scenario that I'm going to run at a convention. I am going to try to run it at least one time at home with my with my friends, with whatever and such. I can't always do that, these days. Very often, it just isn't. My life isn't like that sometimes. I've had a harder than average time finding a good local gaming group that could play on a night that I could play. I'm talking for like 10 years now. I don't have a local game now. When I was in Massachusetts, I only had a local game for a while. Now I would just jump online and find guys. You know what I'm saying? Like now, hey, we live in the future now. High tech. But try to run it at least one time first. And if you can't, the only substitute for that is I would set it up and actually do a simulated run. Right. Read your descriptions. Read them out loud. Make sure you can pronounce all the names in there, or at least you have decide on a pronunciation. You know what I'm saying? If there's a weird fantasy name in there, figure out how you're going to do it. And I recently ran the One Who Watches From Below. What did I just do? I ran the One Who Watches From Below recently, and I actually the big bad's name, in case it came up, I actually wrote his name down phonetically in the first page in there and such, and then said it a bunch of times. And another time in my old Call of Cthulhu game, I spent a long time. Nyarlathotep, 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 just to get used to, this way when it comes up, I can say, I am Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. And then, but you don't want to say it wrong a couple of times. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. And there's actually, a couple of players know this and will come up with really hard to pronounce names to throw me off. You know who you are. Oh boy, so that's one of my weaknesses. But yeah, do a dry run with your friends, and if you can't, do a dry run with just yourself. But make sure you really really grok that scenario that you're going to run. Whatever you choose to do, make sure you've got that one scenario down pat.
The other thing, I think another thing you should know, for example, you should have a backup plan of what happens if you have okay, I'm going to run this game for 8 people and 3 people show up.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? Does that mean you cancel the game and maybe disappoint 3 people, or do you figure out a way that you can adapt for running 3 people? Can you can we suddenly throw in NPC henchmen, or is there a way that you can scale down the monsters, and make encounters survivable or stuff? Because it's the old saying thing, no plan survives contact with the enemy, and no game master survives contact with his players. So it's always good to know what to do in case something like that goes wrong.
No, you're right. My default for that is I always offer to run an NPC cleric. And if it really, and I have had a couple of games where I've only had 1 or 2 people show up, and I'll run multiple NPCs that allows them to. But I would rather have a minimum number of NPCs and henchmen, and then just reduce the challenges, reduce the number of enemies, reduce their hit points, reduce their armor class, and make it so whatever number of people at the table are there, they can do it. Now, again, this is me. After the glorious results of a misspent youth, I can do that fairly, well now because I've had to do it so many times. But I screwed up a lot, you know what I mean? And I've had, my default in the past when I've had to rein it down is I've made it way too easy in earlier times in the past, and I know you can tell that's not fun. So I'm not proud of that. So that is something I have worked out. It's worth giving it a think beforehand. What if someone or even let's say you have 8 characters and you've got 6 players. Okay, you give everybody a choice. Very often this happens when I'm running X-Crawl. And then, hey, no one took the thief or no one took the cleric. What do you do then? I feel like it's up to the party. I think they should, anytime I go in there, if I'm sitting down to a game, I always make sure that our minimum bases are covered. If they don't, you kind of have to let them take their lumps, but you also have to make sure that it's plausible that the group can get through this scenario with just if they don't have any given people. In other words, you can't put a clue in there that only the wizard can get or only the cleric. Or if you do, and that doesn't happen, you have to change that on the fly so those people can still find that clue or whatever, no matter what it is that happens. So.
All right. So say you're prepared and everything, and you figure you know how to read the table. You know how to read the table. You got the adventure ready. You got make all your pre-gens ready. It's our 2 and 4 hour session. The group is 90% cool, but there's one guy, one gal who is there, and they are making trouble. Right? They may be doing it consciously, they may be doing it unconsciously or something, but you can just tell, like everybody else is just okay, clearly they're not buying their shenanigans,
Yeah.
I would say that if it's a home group, what you do, you don't invite that person back. That's the case, but you may never see this group of people again. You have 4 hours together. What do you do? How do you address this situation?
That's tricky. I think the first thing to do is identify what the problem is. And sometimes you just kind of have to just watch and see what they're mad at. Now, there are a lot of disruptive players take so many forms. The one I see a lot is Ball Hog, the guy that has to have the spotlight on them the whole time. And that's a very particular case. And in that case, I'll slow them. Wait. Let's see what everybody else wants to do first. We'll put the brakes in them and say, hold on. Give that a moment for everybody else to we're all playing this together. If you gently call people on stuff like that, they usually will sort of adjust down. Now, if they're just like, there's a difference between being difficult, which that happens all the time. You might meet someone. I had a player, recently who they were obviously very nervous and would occasionally they didn't mean anything by it, but they just kept questioning the plans until nothing was happening because they were just nervous that they were acting like they were on stage and that they were going to get a grade for this or not. And of course, no one's giving out grades. We're just here to have a fun time. So as quickly as you can, identify what that problem is. If they're just, like I said, a problem player you can deal with, but if they're actually belligerent, like if they're actually bullying, picking on somebody at the table, making untoward comments, touching people when they shouldn't be touching them, that person gets exactly one chance to straighten up and fly right with me. I take them aside and I say, or stop them. I had a guy recently, a couple years ago, making off-color jokes, and I gave him my dad voice, hey, and let him know that was not cool. And they stopped. But when I've had that in the past and they wouldn't stop, I will take them aside and I will ask them whatever. Usually they will continue to be belligerent, and I tell them, go ahead, go down to role-playing game HQ and tell them that your GM told you that you get your money back for this game because you're done. Get your stuff and get out. It's hard to bounce somebody who's been there, who showed up to have a good time. I've only had to do it, I'm talking about, again, 15, 16, 17, 18 conventions a year. I've only had to do that. I remember exactly one time, and it was a player who had too much to drink and was belligerent and was picking on somebody. I asked him to cool out, and they told me that I was the one. They were like, well, why can't you just be cool? And I was like, you know what? I think we're done. I think you need to go ahead and do that. There are some people who are, for whatever reason, won't be able to have fun in any given environment, and who sometimes, the worst case scenario, they enjoy taking away from other people's experience. They get a thrill from that. Shut that down. Kick them out. Let them know that's not going to fly at your table. And you have to be tough with those people sometimes, and there's nothing else for it, And if you're, that's, again, this is still in the realm of just social stuff. If they're physically intimidating to you or to anybody else, stop the game, go and get somebody from the convention and, tell them there's a problem and shut that down immediately.
And the old tried and true is that if they are clearly beyond rehabilitation, and you don't want to, you're not feeling empowered enough to confront them physically, well, not physically, but to actually confront them and say, hey, get out of this game. Always you can do is all you need is that sneak attack, and you just roll that die and say, well, because the ogre he gets a +8 to this. What's your armor class? Oh, how many hit points do you have left? Oh, but he gets a +6 because I'm sorry, you're dead. What are you gonna do? You're dead. Shut up. I mean, I'm not saying don't do that all the time, but it's it's an arrow to have in your quiver. There's nothing wrong with killing a character every now and then if they're and then if they'll you say okay, you can hang around and watch if you'd like, but usually they'll stomp off and then everybody around the table high five, they're high fiving you over the judge's screen and everything, and then you get down, you actually have that good time that most of the people at the table paid for and deserve to have. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game, especially if you're playing old school, or DCC or anything where there's an expected fatality rate. I mean, it'd be a little harder, in like ponytails or something like that. But
there's it's funny. There's another kind of disruptor I didn't mention, and that is the guy that says, "Well, wait a minute, I'm not going to wait here. I'm going to go this way. You guys go that way if you want to. I'm walking away." I kill that guy if he's going anywhere. If he's gonna I'll be like, well, you sure you want to split the party here? I mean, sometimes there's a good time to split a party, and obviously it's rare. But the problem is it disrupts the game. And while you're blah 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 talking to me over here, everybody else is sitting there doing nothing, and that's no fun for everybody if everyone can't participate. So yeah, if you decide, I'm just gonna go over here and bang on that door. Hey man, there's a wandering encounter there. I will absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, if everyone does, if the table decides on something like that, all right, Mike, you go this way and Scout it this way, and Todd, you go this way, and Sharon, you come around here. That's different, But someone who's doing that as a disruption, and that there's one person on the circuit who I play with 3 times a year who always does that, and I whack his guy. If he literally is going to try to, he does it intentionally to give me a hard time. He tells me every year, and then I kill his guy, and he's like, "Ha! I died at your table again." Now it's a part of our rapport. But the people who intentionally disrupting the game by splitting the party, that's when that arrow comes out. But
right,
what are you gonna do?
Well, I think we're kind of approaching the end of our time here. So I mean, how fast does this go?
I know, right?
Again, this was originally going to be a 30-minute show, but you guys, you have questions for us, and we have things to talk about. So that's so we're glad we could extend it out to an hour here. The one thing that I think I wanted to reiterate, however, before we stop talking about playing games with strangers, is that if you were running games for strangers, if you were playing with strangers the first time, bring dice. Bring your own dice. This is my big bugbear, okay? If it's if you're going to a role-playing game convention, just bring a single 20-sided, okay? We already talked about don't touch other people's dice, all right? Just bring a dice, all right? That's there's no way that you make me hate you at my table and then show up without dice. So that's soapbox off, all right?
Oh yeah, I got to agree there. And I mean, I always have extra. Sometimes it happens, people legitimately don't have them for whatever reason, they forget. I mean, I'll share out dice, but don't touch someone's dice without permission. And here's my big bugbear: dice cheats. I have caught 2 dice cheats in my time and freaked out on 2 dice cheats in my time. They were not professional high points. That's just my one thing. If I catch you, don't do that. Why would you do that? Have fun. Take your lumps. It's only fair for everyone if you sometimes don't succeed, and that's got to be the game. So please don't cheat at dice.
You know what, Brendan? I think somewhere down the line we should do a show on, just the stuff that we are the things we're not proud of when it comes to gaming.
That's a great idea.
I think the viewers would love to hear about that.
That's a great idea. Okay, yeah. Hey, speaking of which, if you're still watching, Brendan at goodman-game.com. Send us in anticipation. Send us what are you not proud of about your gaming style, and send that on to me, and we'll cue that up for a later show. We want your questions and your comments. We definitely want your treasure type U stuff. So send those over to me, and I'd love to hear them. And I promise, if you emailed me last week and I haven't emailed you back yet, I'll do it soon-ish.
I had one thought about this. I say if this, we're already attracting spam bots, so we might be in this for the long term. If we go 10 years, if there's 10 years of Keep Crawlin with Mike and Brendan, we'll do that 10-year retrospective, and we'll go back and we'll show clips from the first shows. We have that excuse of you look at that picture 10 years and go like, what was I thinking with that haircut? We have an excuse this time. We go, that was in the middle of coronavirus. All our hair is sucked.
I know, right? Do you see how my hair is getting so long that it's screwing my background? This is the first week of that. It's finally gotten long enough where it's giving me grief over here. I keep losing half my screen. It's my hair.
Eventually, it's just going to be your green screen. That's it.
Yeah, pretty soon I'll just be projecting over all of this, and it'll be like wackadoosical. So I'm actually going to match my weird Uncle Brendan picture from the ads here in a minute. So that's exciting. Very exciting.
Very exciting. All right, Brendan, before we close, do we have any sponsors tonight?
We do have a sponsor tonight. We have my current DCC obsession. Tonight, we are sponsored by Colossus Arise by Harley Stroh. Oh, I'm going to run it for DCC Days as part of the Prisoner Exchange game, and I'm so excited about that. I'm never going to be able to do this entire adventure, and I'm still working on what will be included and what will not be included. But I'm so excited to even be running this adventure. So thank you for sponsoring us, Colossus Arise. We hope to do you justice in the upcoming DCC Day. Sign up for DCC Day. I just put my games in. I want you to put your games in. Come play with us. And thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Mike,
I'm running, I think, 5 or 6 sections of the Shutter Mountains. So if you got nothing to do and you want some old-time fantasy Appalachian gaming, please come and join. So in addition to Colossus Rises, today's episode has been sponsored by Type VI Demons. So I know that's Type 6 Demons, but VI, whatever. It's a joke. It's a joke, people.
Thanks so much.
So, all right, so we're going to call it a night. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Michael Curtis.
I'm Brendan LaSalle.
And we'll see you next week here in the basement. All right, until then, keep crawling.
The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night.